Evelyn Parker sat at her kitchen table, staring out the window at the quiet Vermont morning. The snow outside had begun to melt, and small patches of green peeked through the frost. At 63, she had grown used to the stillness, the rhythm of her days filled with tea, crossword puzzles, and old jazz playing softly in the background. Her husband George had passed away 5 years ago, and though time had dulled the sharpness of her grief, it hadn't taken away the ache of missing someone who once filled the house with laughter. She often thought of her family, her daughter, Claire, who lived 2 states away and worked long hours at a marketing firm, and her grandson Jake, who was now 22 and studying computer science in Seattle. He had always been her favorite person to talk to. Even as a child, Jake had this gentle curiosity about life. When he was little, he'd sit by her side asking questions about the stars, love, and why grown-ups cried when they watched old movies. Evelyn missed those days. Lately, though, she hadn't heard from him much. He was busy, she told herself. Classes, friends, maybe even a girlfriend. Still, there was a small part of her that felt forgotten that morning. As she poured herself a cup of coffee, her phone buzzed. The vibration startled her. She rarely got messages unless it was from the pharmacy or a weather alert. When she picked up the phone and saw Jake's name on the screen, a warm smile spread across her face. "Hi, Grandma," the message read. "Can I ask you something kind of personal?" Her heart lifted. It had been weeks since they'd talked, and she was thrilled that he wanted to confide in her. She quickly typed back, her fingers trembling slightly. "Of course, sweetheart. You can always ask me anything." A few seconds later, his reply came through. "It's about love." Evelyn froze. Love. That wasn't the kind of question she expected from Jake. He was thoughtful but private, especially about his personal life. She took a sip of her coffee, trying to think of the right response. "All right," she typed. "Go ahead. I'll try to help." After a pause, another message arrived. "Do you think love can work between people with a big age difference?" Evelyn blinked. That caught her off guard. Her mind began racing. Was Jake seeing someone older? Or maybe he was just asking out of curiosity. She smiled softly to herself. How big of an age difference are we talking about? She wrote. His answer came quickly. Maybe 15, 20 years? Maybe more. She let out a quiet breath. So that was it. He was seeing someone older. Evelyn didn't want to jump to conclusions, but she also didn't want to sound judgmental. She knew that love didn't always follow rules. After all, we'd fallen in love with George despite everyone telling her they were too different. He had been her high school teacher back then. Not inappropriate, but still a story that raised eyebrows. Yet their marriage had lasted 40 years. Evelyn placed her phone on the table and gazed at the melting snow. Memories of her own love story flooded back. How people had whispered, how her parents had worried, how she and George had ignored it all because what they had was real. She picked the phone back up and typed carefully. "Jake, love doesn't always care about age. What matters is respect, honesty, and understanding. But it's important to make sure it's the right kind of love, healthy, kind, and mutual." The typing bubbles appeared, then stopped, then appeared again. Finally, his next message came through. "I think it is, Grandma. She makes me feel calm. She listens to me. She's different from people my age. But I don't know if others will understand." Evelyn's heart softened. He sounded so sincere, so conflicted. She remembered that feeling, being in love but afraid the world wouldn't approve. She could hear the tension in his words. It stirred something protective inside her. "People always have opinions," she replied. "But real love doesn't need everyone's approval. It just needs truth." "Does she care for you too?" Jake's response came slower this time. "I think she does. But she's scared people will judge. I told her I don't care, but she said I'm too young to understand." Evelyn smiled sadly. "She might just be worried about you. When someone older cares, they think about what's best for the other person. Sometimes love means protecting, not holding on." He didn't reply for several minutes. Evelyn could tell he was thinking. When her phone finally buzzed again, she felt her heart skip. "You always know what to say," he wrote. "That's why I messaged you first. You get it? You understand people?" she smiled, her eyes stinging slightly. "I've had a lifetime to learn, darling. Hearts are complicated, but they always tell the truth." Then came one more message. "She actually reminds me of you, Grandma. She's kind, patient, and she listens the same way you do." Evelyn froze. Her fingers hovered over the phone. She didn't know what to say. For a few seconds, she could only stare at the message, her chest tightening in a strange, unexpected way. It wasn't inappropriate, it was heartfelt, pure, and innocent. Still, it hit her deeply. She finally typed, "That's very sweet, Jake. I'm glad she treats you well. You deserve someone who listens to you." But as she set the phone down, her heart ached with something she couldn't name. Maybe it was nostalgia. Maybe it was the quiet loneliness she'd learned to live with. Jake's words reminded her how good it felt to be seen, to be appreciated even if only through comparison. The day drifted on quietly. She tried to distract herself with chores, watering her plants, baking a loaf of bread. But her thoughts kept circling back to their conversation. Jake's openness had touched her. The idea of someone younger finding comfort in an older person's presence reminded her of how wisdom, warmth, and emotional connection could still draw people together. Later that evening, as she sat on her couch reading, her phone buzzed again. She smiled, expecting another message from Jake. But this one wasn't a question. It was simple and honest. "Thank you for understanding me. You always make me feel heard." Evelyn stared at the words for a long time before replying. "Always, sweetheart. That's what family is for." But as she put the phone down, she realized something deeper. Jake hadn't just come to her for advice. He had come looking for connection, for understanding, for the kind of emotional closeness that people often forget to offer in a fast, noisy world. That night, she sat by the window watching snowflakes fall again, her reflection faint in the glass. She smiled to herself, whispering, "He's growing up, and maybe I'm learning too." For the first time in a while, Evelyn didn't feel so alone. That simple text conversation had bridged miles, years, and generations. It had reminded her that love, in any form, wasn't just about romance. It was about being seen, being valued, and being remembered. And yet, she couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper was waiting behind Jake's words, something he hadn't said yet, a secret perhaps, or a truth he wasn't ready to share. She didn't know it then, but that message, innocent as it seemed, would change both of their lives in a way she never expected. The following morning, Evelyn woke to the sound of light rain tapping against her window. The soft, gray light filled her small Vermont home. And she moved slowly through her morning routine, brewing coffee, feeding her cat, and checking her phone. She half expected another message from Jake, but the screen was empty. Still, she smiled, remembering their conversation from the night before. It had left her heart lighter, even if something about it kept replaying in her mind. She wondered how Jake was doing. He'd always been bright and curious, but also sensitive to sensitive. She sometimes thought for a world that moved so fast. She thought about calling him, but didn't want to seem overbearing. He was in college, living his own life. So she let the thought fade and spent the rest of her morning reading and baking. By afternoon, the sky cleared. Evelyn put on her cardigan and stepped outside to breathe the cool air. The quiet hum of the neighborhood wrapped around her. Then suddenly, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out and froze when she saw Jake's name. "Hey, Grandma," the message read. "Are you home today?" She smiled. "Of course, dear. Why?" "I'm driving through Vermont," he replied. "Thought maybe I could stop by for a bit. Just to say hi." Evelyn's heart leaped. Jake? Visiting without notice. She hadn't seen him in nearly a year. She quickly typed back, "Of course. I'd love that. Do you know what time you'll get here?" "Maybe in 2 hours," he said. "If that's okay?" "Perfect," she replied, smiling so hard her cheeks hurt. The next 2 hours flew by in a rush of small preparations. She tidied the living room, changed the tablecloth, and baked her famous apple pie. It wasn't that Jake expected it. She just wanted things to feel warm, welcoming. She caught her reflection in the mirror as she brushed her short silver hair. A strange mix of excitement and nerves filled her. It wasn't just that she missed him. It was that she felt a quiet pride knowing he wanted to see her when the knock came. She opened the door to find Jake standing there. Taller than she remembered, his brown hair a little longer. His smile wide and genuine. "Grandma?" he said, pulling her into a hug that melted every bit of loneliness she'd carried for months. "Oh, Jake," she said softly, holding on to him. "You look so grown up." He laughed. "You say that every time." "Well," she said, smiling, "you keep proving me right." He stepped inside, shaking off the light rain from his jacket. "This place hasn't changed a bit," he said, looking around. "Some things don't need to," she replied warmly. "Pie's in the oven, coffee's ready." They sat at the kitchen table, the same one where she and George had spent countless evenings. For a moment, the scene felt timeless. A young man, his grandmother, and the quiet rhythm of life between them. "So," Evelyn said after a few minutes, "how's school treating you?" Jake sighed, leaning back. "Busy, stressful, but good. I guess that's college life." She nodded. "And the person you mentioned last night? How's that going?" He hesitated, then smiled faintly. "Still complicated," Evelyn chuckled. "Most real things are." He looked at her closely, his eyes soft. "You always know how to make things sound simple. That's age," she said. "You live long enough, you learn what really matters and what doesn't." For a moment, silence filled the room. Then Jake's tone shifted slightly. "Grandma, can I tell you something?" "Of course, sweetheart, anything." He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "That person I told you about, the one older than me, she's amazing. She makes me feel grounded. But she's afraid of what people would think. I told her age doesn't matter, but she said it's not just age, it's what people assume." Evelyn leaned forward slightly. "What do they assume? That it's wrong, or that I don't understand what I'm feeling?" He looked down. "But I do. I've never felt this sure about anyone before." His honesty touched her deeply. He sounded vulnerable, searching for understanding, not judgment. She smiled softly. "Jake, when I met your grandfather, people said the same things. They said I was too young, he was too serious. But what they didn't see was how much we cared for each other. Sometimes the world confuses kindness for weakness, but love built on care is stronger than most people realize." Jake nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful. "You make it sound so simple." "Not simple," she said. "It's brave." They sat quietly for a while. The smell of apple pie filled the room. Evelyn poured more coffee, and Jake's gaze lingered on her with a kind of deep affection. Not romantic, but filled with warmth and admiration. "You know," he said finally, "I'm glad I came today. Talking to you makes everything clearer. It's like you see things most people miss." She smiled, touched. "That's because I've made all the mistakes already." He laughed, then grew serious again. "There's something else," he said. "She told me she might move away soon. Somewhere far. And I don't know what to do." Evelyn's heart softened. She recognized that ache, the helplessness of knowing love might slip away. She reached across the table, resting her hand gently on his. "If she means that much to you, tell her. Life's too short for quiet regrets." Jake looked at her hand, then at her eyes, his voice softer. "You really think love can survive all that?" She nodded slowly. "I know it can, but only if both people want it to." Something unspoken passed between them, a moment of quiet understanding that bridged generations. Evelyn realized she wasn't just giving advice. She was giving him the courage to fight for what mattered. They spent the rest of the evening talking, laughing, remembering small things. Evelyn told stories about when she was young, about George, about the world before cell phones and streaming and endless noise. Jake listened intently, as if soaking up every word. As the night deepened, rain began again, tapping gently on the windows. Evelyn got up to bring the pie to the table. "Still warm," she said proudly. Jake smiled. "I've missed this. You, the house, everything." She looked at him with affection. "Then don't stay away so long next time." I won't, he said softly. They ate quietly, the moment filled with simple comfort. But under it, Evelyn could sense something more. She could feel that Jake's visit wasn't just about passing through. There was something he wasn't saying, a reason behind his sudden arrival. Hidden behind his thoughtful eyes, later, as she washed the dishes and he dried them beside her, he broke the silence again. Grandma. Yes, dear. He hesitated. You know that person I told you about? Yes? He looked at her carefully, his tone gentler. She told me I reminded her of someone she cared about a long time ago. Someone she said taught her what love really means. Evelyn turned, meeting his eyes. And who was that? He smiled faintly. She said she'd tell me when she was ready. Evelyn laughed softly. Sounds like she's mysterious. Yeah, he said. But I kind of like that. For a brief moment, Evelyn saw in him the boy who used to ask endless questions, and the man he was becoming, full of quiet depth and emotion. Her heart swelled with pride. When the evening ended, Jake stood by the door, slipping on his jacket. Thanks for today, Grandma. I didn't realize how much I needed to be here. She smiled warmly. You're always welcome, Jake, always. He hesitated, then leaned in and hugged her tightly. It wasn't quick, it was the kind of hug that said things words couldn't. She held him just as firmly, her eyes closing for a moment when he finally left. The house felt quiet again, but it wasn't the same kind of quiet as before. It was softer, lighter. There was something peaceful about it, as if his visit had left behind a bit of his energy, his warmth. Evelyn stood by the window long after his car disappeared down the road. She smiled faintly. Her reflection caught in the glass. Something inside her told her this wasn't the end of their story, just the beginning of something deeper. Something life had quietly planned for both of them. She didn't know it yet, but Jake's next message would open a door she never expected to walk through. 2 days passed since Jake's visit, and Evelyn couldn't stop thinking about him. Every small detail replayed in her mind, his thoughtful eyes, the way he listened, the way his words seemed to carry a quiet weight. There was something different about him that she couldn't quite explain. He had come to her with questions, but somehow she felt he had left something behind, a message, a feeling she didn't yet understand. That evening, the air outside was crisp, and the leaves whispered against her porch. Evelyn sat with a cup of tea, watching the golden light fade over the hills. She was thinking about calling Jake just to check if he'd made it back safely. But before she could, her phone buzzed. It was him. Hey, Grandma, the message began. I didn't get to say everything I wanted when I was there. She smiled, her heart lifting slightly. You can say it now, sweetheart, she replied. After a moment, another message appeared. I wanted to thank you not just for the pie or the stories, but for always understanding me when no one else did. You've taught me more about love than anyone. Evelyn blinked, reading the words twice. There was warmth in them, but also something deeper, something layered with emotion she couldn't quite name. She typed back, You've always had a kind heart, Jake. You see the world with sincerity, and that's rare. Don't ever lose it. But then his next message came, and it took her breath away. You know that person I told you about, the one older than me? The one I said made me feel grounded and alive. Yes. She typed slowly, her fingers trembling slightly. It's you, Grandma. I didn't know how to say it before, but it's you. Evelyn froze. The message seemed to echo in the quiet of her living room. For a long moment she couldn't move. She read it again and again, trying to make sense of the words. Jake, her grandson, couldn't possibly mean it the way it sounded. And yet his message was filled with emotion, with a kind of honesty that made her chest tighten. Her hands shook as she set the phone down. She stood and paced the room, heart racing. The warmth she'd felt before turned to confusion. What did he mean? Surely he didn't mean it literally. Maybe he was just expressing gratitude, saying she inspired him. Yes, that must be it. Still, she couldn't ignore the trembling inside her. A few minutes later, another message appeared. I know this sounds strange. I'm not talking about love the way people would think. It's more like, you make me understand what love is. The kind that's patient, kind, and forgiving. I just wanted you to know that." Evelyn exhaled slowly, her tension easing. The air around her seemed to soften again. She read the message carefully, feeling her heart steady. It wasn't what she feared, it was something pure, deeper. Jake wasn't confused. He was grateful. He was learning what it meant to love with compassion. And somehow, Chad helped him see that dot. She smiled faintly and typed back, "Oh, Jake, that's one of the kindest things anyone's ever said to me. Love isn't always romantic, you know? Sometimes it's the kind that stays in the soul, quiet, steady, and real." A few dots appeared on the screen, then disappeared. A moment later, his reply came. "That's exactly what I meant. You've shown me what that looks like. Thank you, Grandma, really." She felt tears welling in her eyes. Not of sadness, but something else. Pride, gratitude. Maybe even a gentle ache that came from realizing she had made an impact that would last beyond her years. Later that night, she sat by the fireplace thinking of all the times she'd doubted her worth since George passed. She had spent so many evenings wondering if anyone still needed her, if her stories and advice still mattered. But now she realized they did. Through Jake, through his understanding heart. Her life's lessons were continuing. The next morning, Evelyn woke up early, feeling strangely light. The sky was painted in pale pink and gold. She made herself breakfast and decided to write Jake a letter. Something real, something he could hold. She began, "Dear Jake, when you told me what you felt last night, I realized that love comes in many forms. It isn't just about who we marry or how we're seen by others. It's about the connections that remind us we're alive. You've reminded me that even in quiet years, love can still grow, still surprise us. I'm proud of the man you're becoming." She signed it with all my heart, Grandma. When she finished, she slipped the letter into an envelope and placed it on her table. She smiled, knowing she'd give it to him next time he visited. It was her way of saying that some feelings, even when unspoken, could last forever, pure and unbroken. That afternoon, she received another text. "Hey, Grandma, I've been thinking a lot since we talked. I want to see you again soon. I have something to show you." Evelyn typed back, "You're always welcome here, Jake. My door's open." "Good," he replied, "because I think you'll like this one. It's a painting I made inspired by you." "A painting?" She wrote, surprised. "Yeah," he said. "You sitting by the window with your cat. I called it The Heart Remembers." Evelyn's eyes filled again. "That's beautiful, Jake." "Not as beautiful as the real thing," he replied, a simple sincerity in his words. She smiled, her heart full. For the first time in years, she didn't feel lonely. She felt seen, truly seen, through the eyes of someone who understood her spirit, not her age. A week later, Jake arrived with the painting. It was breathtaking. The soft brush strokes captured her expression perfectly, a mixture of reflection and warmth. The sunlight in the painting bathed her figure in gold. Evelyn stood before it, speechless. "Oh, Jake, it's lovely." He smiled shyly. "You inspired it. I wanted to show how I see you, strong, kind, and full of light." She reached out and hugged him. "You've given me something I'll treasure forever." He hugged her back, and in that quiet moment, they both understood something profound. Love doesn't always fit into easy words or ordinary definitions. Sometimes it lives in the spaces between, in gestures, in gratitude, in the way one heart can quietly change another. When Jake left that evening, Evelyn placed the painting in her living room. Every time she walked by, she felt comforted. It was more than a picture. It was a memory frozen in color, a symbol of connection between two souls who had found understanding across generations. As the days went by, their bond grew even stronger. Jake called more often, visited whenever he could, and each time, they'd talk for hours about life, love, choices, and the quiet power of forgiveness. Evelyn felt alive again. Months later, when the first snow of winter arrived, Jake sent her one more message. "Grandma, I got accepted into the art residency I told you about. I'm dedicating my first exhibit to you." Tears filled her eyes. "Oh, Jake, I'm so proud of you. You've turned your heart into art, he replied. You taught me how. Evelyn sat by the window watching snowflakes drift past. She smiled softly. Life had surprised her, not with romance or adventure, but with something much deeper. The reminder that love, in its truest form, is timeless. It doesn't depend on age or rules. It simply exists where kindness lives. That night, as she turned off the lights and looked at Jake's painting one last time, she whispered, "Thank you, Jake, for reminding me that the heart never grows too old to feel." And somewhere out there, Jake looked up at the same winter sky, smiling, knowing she understood everything he never had to say.